The Middle Ages attract many people. No computers, offices, and advertising. On every corner, there is only the romance of the Crusades, clean air, and a rich social life. But what if you really got into those times? Such a flight into the past will take place in the next few minutes. Not move on, and we'll get started. The beginning of the Middle Ages is considered to be the fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476 AD. And the end was when fall Byzantium with beginning of the Renaissance, sometime around 1500. For 1,000 years it was fun on the planet. America opened up, the Crusaders took Jerusalem, the Vikings raped Europe, and the plague raped everyone. Typically, these videos claim that life was good only among the aristocrats. But we will go the other way. Let's say you are really a typical English knight. Crusades, which in theory should live happily and healthy. In this case, your day starts around 5 a.m. with breakfast and a grueling workout. Because if you are a self-respecting knight, then you should not sleep in full outfit, and she is fun from 30 to 50 kilograms. The full equipment of a modern paratrooper hardly reaches the mark of 30 kilograms, most which is contained in the backpack. The knights did not have such amenities. The Royal Magazine did an experiment by dressing people in knightly armor and letting them run tracks. Even regular walking took twice as much energy, and while running, the figure doubled. That is, watching pictures with knights on the internet and dreaming of becoming them, get ready that any movement will become at least twice as difficult. And if you are a self-respecting knight, do not forget about the sword. There is a widespread myth that they weighed 18 kilograms. In real life, everything is simpler. According to the assurances of a British expert in the field of balls, a combat sword rarely weighed more than 2 kilograms. It is logical because you need to learn fencing from childhood, and a 20-kilogram monster will not work for a child. Now about the children, since you are a knight, you almost certainly have a squire who will help you carry a piece of iron. The faithful boy sleeps and sees his coming of age in order to become a knight himself. Of course, provided that he is of noble blood. Commoners serve as squires for life. Only in exceptional cases they receive the right to be knighted. We have now practiced what squire dressed and fought about becoming crusaders. Not everyone is a knight. The position must be obtained, and there is a cruel hierarchy here. You can't go on a hike on your own. You need to wait for the command of the Pope, and even if there is one, we need permission. Since we are a typical knight, then, definitely, we are something of a vassal, so having put on all the equipment and sitting on a horse, together with a squire, we advance to the suzerain for his approval. The campaign lasts at least a year, and not every gentleman will be happy about the loss of the knights for such a period. Luckily, Christians considered crusades obligatory and permission was granted 99% of the time, but even at this stage we are not yet a crusader. Of course, you need to go to the church to take an overseas dinner. There we are checked for sins and asked about finances. It's important to go for 3 years, and all 3 years you need to eat something. And if the family remains at home, while the breadwinner is on the campaign, they need to somehow survive. But do not worry, we are a noble knight and money is not a problem. The church took care of its wars. There was the so-called Saladin 10. Every inhabitant of Europe paid a tenth of their income to support the Crusaders. Otherwise, they would have been excommunicated, which in those days was considered a death sentence. There were exceptions when people sold their houses to go to hiking, but we will be a lucky knight with money. Well, as a final bonus, the church court, for the duration of the campaign, you will take our family under protection, which means that not a single moneylender will dare to poke his nose at his wife for debts while we are on a campaign. If our house is robbed, the church will turn the city over but find an asshole. The guys did everything so that the knight was focused only on Jerusalem. So after consultation and long prayer, we take an overseas dinner and become a crusader. Now we have full right to put that same white cross on clothes, and even the last asshole will bow to us from the bottom of his heart. Well, then another routine awaits us from our cozy estate in Manchester to Jerusalem, 5,000 kilometers. There are several options, either to cross the English Channel and move to Italy to sail on ships, or to sail on ships right away. Here the first problems arose. Even with the financial support of the church, sometimes you had to pay extra for a normal place, but this is not a problem. The problem in Jerusalem and the Middle Ages. Firstly, Allied Europe was not as friendly as it is now. France and England competed for dominance in Normandy, and in this regard in the Third Crusade they did not act together, but each on their own. The famous Frederick Barbarossa died on the way. As a result, instead of 10,000 armed to the teeth of the Germans, reached the lands of Saladin X. Similar situations were observed in the first campaigns. Often, even on the way, the Allies entered into direct battles with each other, Rusiki or Christians, whom Catholics consider the same enemies. So it's quite possible that the story of our imaginary English crusader would have ended on the sword of some Greek rebel. And on the way there was the disease malaria, a terrible disease to this day, claims millions of lives a year. Imagine what percentage of the dead the poor Crusaders had. Son of Friedrich. Barbarossa, Duke Frederick, who reached Antioch, died of malaria, as did every 10th Crusader. Poor diet played a role. Constant dried fruits and monotonous rations led to another terrible disease, scurvy. During the campaign, the legendary Richard de Lionheart almost died from her and was left without hair and nails. It was harder for ordinary knights. There is a known case when in 1098 the Crusaders, after the capture of the Syrian fortresses of Mora, engaged in cannibalism. We will not even mention banal things like dysentery. The case of the French King Louis X is interesting. His rear pipes were so worn out that the guy simply cut off the back of his pants. But even if our Crusader resettled everything, the battle in the Arabian desert was exhausting. Remember the weight of our equipment. Now imagine that it is 40 degrees outside, and around the most a terrible enemy, people professing a different religion, and no Geneva Conventions on human rights. Life was worth nothing. People were burned with oil, tortured and killed with the most sophisticated methods. Historians still cannot determine the number of victims of campaigns. But even from completely successful campaigns at best, 60% of the Crusaders returned home, and at worst, like Second Crusade where the armies were almost completely destroyed. So the chances of returning home for our Crusader were at best 30%. After returning, it took a long time to restore the mind and body, and there weren't even any sensible trophies. The guys gave the sacred relics to the church, and there was nothing more significant. Often, the church stopped financial assistance and had to survive on their own. But there is good news: the Crusader who returned home brought glory to his house. Even the next generation carried the title with pride, which helped them get a job or arrange a profitable wedding. So every time you dream of becoming a Crusader, think not about romance, but about smells in a tent where everyone around you has not taken a shower for at least a year, and have suffer from malaria, dysentery, and other joys of life. Plus a tiny chance to get home, and wonder if it's still better to watch this video on YouTube in 2023, sitting in a cozy apartment, or is the nightly path more attractive? Let me know in the comments, and see you soon, friends.